Well, hey, I'm Dreesap, and Crimson Desert is a game that's taken up over 100 hours of my time, so I want to talk about the good, the bad, and everything in between with this game. So I'm going to break down different elements of the game that come together to make it what it is. I suppose the best place to start would be the story, though I don't feel the story is the biggest selling point of this game, and I completely understand it if a lot of people, really most people that play this game, don't really have a lot of investment in what's going on within the main story. The best way I can put the story is you play as a man named Cliff who is a part of a company of warriors called the Greymanes, located in a region called Payloon. You guys are ambushed by your enemies called the Black Bears, and everybody, after losing this battle, is either dead or on the run. The main character, Cliff, is basically fatally wounded but ends up in a place called the Abyss and gets this ring that gives him different abilities, along with basically being tasked with saving the world by a witch and this guy, I believe his name Alton. And he has to also, on top of this, deal with all the political troubles and all the other problems of the various kingdoms and people in this land that we are roaming through. And you can do a lot of other things in this world, but the main story is something you kind of have to progress through because there are things that are locked off. Obviously, chapter 7 is really where you want to make it to have everything you really need, and then you can kind of go off into the world a little bit more freely because it unlocks all the various things like the secondary characters, the camp mechanics, different quality of life benefits, this kind of comrade system where you can send out people to do certain missions, gather resources, do all these things to kind of help you in your gameplay. You got to go past chapter 7 and kind of get close to the end of the game. You want to unlock the dragon and the mech you saw in the promotional material, but realistically, I got to say, they're not particularly worth it. That's why I said just you could just play up to chapter 7 of the 13 chapters. It's 13 chapters including the epilogue to really get access to everything you want. Because the mech and the dragon have setbacks that make them, while they're cool, you would think a dragon and a mech, yes, that's awesome, that's wonderful. But not really in practice because one, the mech, you have to go through a particular area to get it every time you need it. I imagine there's some way of you being able to store it on yourself, but that's probably dealing with like the cuckoo pot thing that lets you store certain items. And you got to go through finding different items, different things to kind of upgrade those and build those. And you might not want to do it. And it's not really that effective, and it disappears if a cutscene happens. At least in my experience, it disappeared in these particular cutscenes. I was flying over, somehow I accidentally ended up in a boss fight because I wasn't really knowing where I was going, and it was just gone after I ended the boss fight. So I was like, "Fuck it, I'm not running all the way back to get that." And the dragon has a cooldown, and it feels like it takes at least 30 minutes. Sometimes it really kind of feels like an hour. So though it gives you the ability to kind of fly around freely through the world, you have to wait so long in between summoning it, and then say you teleport to another area, or you go do something else, such as you get into a boss fight or you get into some type of fight and you die, and then you respawn and it's just gone, and you can't really call it back. So it feels useless, and the fire breathing attacks that it has, I never really used any of that outside of the story sections where you have to use it, and by then you're close to the end of the game. And it feels so strange to have it as a cooldown because it seems like it'd be a lot more fun to be able to kind of travel around the world with it. But waiting so long in between everything just feels terrible. Honestly, it kind of makes it just not really worth much. So even after I unlocked it, I couldn't really use it that much. And honestly, I guess I gotta say, the two separate characters you can play as, they, they're not really worth it much to me for reasons I'll kind of get into when I talk about combat and character progression. But I was really not having that much fun when I had to hop into a section where I was forced to play them. There's only like two of them, but you kind of have to do it. Otherwise, you can't really go back to Cliff. And it happens decently far into the game. Well, it varies depending on how much time you spend doing side quests. The times can vary greatly. So it could be maybe you just go right through the main quest, and by the time you come across them, it's pretty early on. Well, at least for the first one, Diamond, Probably didn't pronounce her name correctly. I didn't hear it enough to really say it right because she only popped up here and there, honestly. But yeah, it could vary greatly. So you could encounter her in a few hours, or maybe encounter her in 30 hours. And the other guy's way further on, chapter 7. So, like I said, really just depends on how much time you're spending in side quests and doing all these various things. But back to really kind of more of the story. I guess this kind of fits into the story, honestly, because they do play parts in it, relatively big ones, I guess, at least in the sections where they're at the forefront of the story. But if you are interested in knowing about the story, I'm not going to spoil it, even though I don't think it's a bad story, but I can't really even spoil it, honestly, because there's a story there, but it feels like despite watching it and seeing everything going on and playing through the entirety of it, I'm just here like, okay, it just did not engross me whatsoever. I was not engaged. Like, there's some cool set pieces here and there. There's some things that look epic. Sometimes they get kind of janky. I remember one section where I was using the dragon and I kept getting stuck with some rocks. And it's like, these things kind of seem epic, but also given the fact you kind of have to start everything all over again. There's no checkpoint from once you reach a certain milestone in certain actions sometimes. And not to mention, you can't just skip the cutscenes. So if there's anything in this game with a cutscene, sometimes relatively long, you can speed it up, but it can be a little bit annoying, especially in some fights where I was getting my ass beat a few times, and I was just like, okay. They really happened in the main story. The main story wasn't really the problem with the ass beatings. I mostly got caught up on just like jank a few times, but that was way later on in some sections. But there were some boss fights I was in, like doing side quests and stuff like that, where it's like I'm going through this long ass animation, and then the enemy's going to attack you in the midst of it. And then, because it's a new type of enemy, there's going to be a prompt. And all this happens in semi-slow down time. So it's really like, there's a perfectly good chance you might lose an opportunity for attack, or you might just get hit outright because enemies attack in the cutscene and you gotta dodge it, which usually you can do it perfectly fine. But at some point you reach a level of annoyance if enemies already been beating your ass a few times. It's not the worst thing, but it's a gripe I do have. But most time it looks nice, it's cool. But yeah, I just had to get that off my chest because that was an annoying point when I was fighting this mechanized enemy in a circus. And on top of his hitbox not making sense sometimes, it was frustration that was there. But more on that later. That you can gain, and some are useful. Some have their unique abilities. Some have abilities that are connected to their abyss gears. And abyss gears are interchangeable, so as long as you have a slot in something, you can take it out and put it in something similar. Because maybe one type of abyss gear might only fit in gloves, or in a weapon, or in a shield, or in something like that. And the number of sockets you kind of have will differ from weapon to weapon, or really weapon type. So usually with just a normal sword, you get like 3. But with a long sword, you can get like 5, plus all ones in armor. And some of these are just stat progression. Some of these give you bonuses against certain enemies, resistant to the elements. Some will allow you to do special abilities whenever you do a certain type of attack. Because since this game is really an action game, there's some RPG elements in it, but it's largely an action game. So say you do a certain combo, you might do a certain attack along with it. Like shoot out poison, you might summon down lightning, a variety of things based upon the attack you're using and the abyss gear you have within it. And this does give some variety, because there is equipment that has, like I said, its own unique abilities. So you can have that unique ability along with the abyss gears, and you kind of make your own build and change things up, especially when it comes to elemental attacks, because there's some gears that will only work once you unlock elemental imbuing, and it will only work if you also unlock that particular element. And basically this happens by going through different of the abyss challenges. So you unlock lightning surge, frost mantle, flame strike, and storm veil. And once you have these, whenever you imbue these elements into a certain attack, then the abyss gear activates and does something alongside it. Whether that's shooting out things with magma, sending out ice, sending out lightning, wherever it may be, depending on how you've decided to mix and match things. It really just depends on your own decision and what you found out in the world. And I like the variety because there is some fun to this combat. Because, of course, you have the different weapons you use, your bow, your swords. Just talking about Cliff here right now. Long swords, spears, martial arts. There is some cool stuff along with grappling. And you can mix and match all of these within a fight to do some fun things. And especially with the numerous abilities you can unlock by leveling up certain skills or unlocking certain skills. And there's a decent variety of animations even for the similar attacks, and even some work depending if you have an enemy up against a wall or they're on the ground. It doesn't do more damage really, but it does add to the appeal of combat. Blocks, parries, all these things, running through people with your shield, it's genuinely fun. And they all change based on if you have a weapon in one hand, you have a sword and shield, you have dual weapons, and it all just looks nice. I enjoy it. The fighting is the main thing you're going to be doing in this game. It's really the selling point. That along with the world. Actually, later is going to be right now, because I want to talk about the combat and character progression, because the combat is one of the big selling points. I really enjoy the combat system in the game. It's fun, it's fluid, it's nice. There's some jank here and there with some fights, like I've already stated, but for the most part, when you're going through and fighting people, it is wonderful. There's good variety to all the moves, not just in the moves you can use, but also in the animation for the moves. So some attacks you might be using a lot might change if the enemy's on the ground, if it against a wall, and it can look actually very nice. And every weapon has a different move set, different animation to go alongside it, and it feels different to play. And especially as you go through the game, you're able to switch from your main weapon to your secondary one, along with grappling, along with punching, along with imbuing your attacks with certain elements after you go through the abyss puzzles and do all that stuff and unlock them. It can genuinely be fun, especially if you get your parries down, your blocks down. You can bash enemies with your shield, you can run through them. You can jump over in the air and just land down with meteor kicks. You can use your grappling hook to spin them around. Once you really get used to it, you can kind of flow through it and get a nice motion going. And you kind of want to learn that because you'll be fighting a lot of enemies at once. You can also use the environment, such as exploding barrels or things like that, throwing enemies off cliffs, knocking them over, hitting with range attacks, especially because you can slow down time. One of the attacks that I liked the most was using the blinding strike, because once you unlock this, it basically slows down time and blinds your enemies for a second, and you can just deal a lot of damage to them at once. I really did just start spamming this attack a lot. It does take spirit to use, because you do have three things you're going to use. Of course, health, stamina, spirit. Spirit is just mana. And along with Abyss Gears, which is another route of progression, are basically items that can be socketed into your armor, your weapons, and they can give you different abilities. Some are just stat increases, +1 to attack, +2, +3, +3 to defense, attack speed, critical hit, things like that. Some give you resistance to the elements. Some will give you special abilities. So when you do any number of the moves in the game, if it correlates with that particular Abyss Gear, that Abyss Gear will activate, and maybe you'll summon ice, maybe you'll shoot out poison, maybe your attacks will get longer range, shoot out a beam. It can do a lot of different things, depending on what you find in the world. And along with that, to talk about this game when it comes to character progression is the fact there's no XP, not really. There is some type of XP system that goes into this resource you get for leveling up, but the game never really explains how or when that's going to happen, because Abyss Gears are how you level up. You get these from usually fighting bosses. You'll find some out in the world. You get them for doing challenges. You get them for solving puzzles in the Abyss. And this also kind of flows into why I didn't really invest a lot in the other two characters, because you're not going to be using them much in the main story. They even say that on the page on Steam. They're characters you're going to be using a lot if you want to in the side quest, because they have different movesets. They have their own armor and weapons that only they can use. Cliff cannot use them. I never really used either one of them outside of the portions where I had to, because by the time I got around to attaching them or using them or even really got access to them, I had already invested a lot into Cliff. Because since there's no XP, these Abyss artifacts that you unlock, and I think by the end of it, I had unlocked over 110 of them, 120. By the time I reached 120, 130 hours, and I didn't really feel like investing those into them because, of course, you use it to upgrade your character and all that stuff, all your health, all your mana, all your stamina, and unlocking these new skills for your character. But also, as you go through the game, once you reach a certain level when it comes to upgrading your weapons and armor, they start requiring Abyss artifacts alongside just the other resources such as iron and everything like that. So I was sitting here thinking, okay, so I could invest in the character I'm going to be playing during the majority of the main quest, along with the one that I'm comfortable with, and I've kind of learned how he plays, and I like his playstyle, and I really prefer it even over the other two. So I could invest in him, putting all this in there to make sure he's strong enough, or I could take that and invest into the skill trees of these other two characters, and it just didn't really seem reasonable, because since they have different armor sets, sure, they can use summon weapons. Like one character might be able to use your long swords. Well, they can both really use your long swords or your single-handed swords and stuff like that. But here's the thing. It's not like you have an infinite inventory we can carry these around, because in the scenes where I did have to play as them, I wouldn't always have their armor sets there because I'd have them in storage. Because you unlock storage and unlock extra pouches for your character by doing side quests. And I did a good amount of them, so I had a good amount of storage. But there's also not infinite storage to the side, like personal storage. You'll unlock some of that as you go on, but that was really a feature that wasn't added on until after the game was out. So if you're like me and you're playing day one and you're going through there, you don't have many places to put anything. And actually, you couldn't put anything there. You couldn't store anything in those personal storage things you had. So it was one of those things where it just wasn't convenient. And even now, it's not really convenient because that extra storage is locked behind the progression. They just kind of added that extra storage like last week when I'm recording this. So it just got to a point where I was sitting here like, I don't know. I don't see any reason to do this. That was kind of a rambling mess, but because my thoughts are all over the place, even though I wrote some of this down. Because now I'm sitting thinking about how kind of inconvenient that actually was. But yeah, it just didn't make sense. So I didn't do it. But for somebody, it might be fun. Because there's some variety there that you might like. But for me, I just stuck with the Cliff. Especially because for one of them, Onka, you have to go to a small quest and get out some resources. And you have to build him a jetpack, or otherwise he can't glide. I'm just like, I went and did it. But I never really needed to use it. Because I never played with him after the part where it was necessary to play as him. And also, here's another thing. I thought I would have to play as them more after their sections in the main story that they were available. And the reason I thought that, because one, their sections came out of the blue for me, so I did keep some of their armor later on, thinking, okay, maybe during the end of the game, is there going to be some type of thing where it's going to be like one of those heroic moments where everybody's working together and they're going to switch me from them back to Cliff and then back to the other one. So I kept some armor just in case, but it didn't happen. So I just kept that armor in there for no reason. I'm like, oh, okay. That was a waste of my time, I guess. That was a waste of the storage slots. And some of this probably because I was relatively negative, but actually I did enjoy this game. I wouldn't play it for over 100 hours. I didn't. But there's just some things in here that will annoy you or bother you, especially if you were playing right when it came out and there were some inconvenient things within it. But I did engage with the combat. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the boss fights. There's a good variety of them, especially as you get to the end of the game and you're fighting some of the overwhelming foes. One of them took me a while to beat, and I didn't beat another one because they have some absolutely massive health bars. I'm talking about after you beat the main story, you'll get this useless thing. You'll see it and you'll be like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. 9,999 damage? That's crazy. Durability of 1. Because there's some weapons in here with durability. Not many, but there's some with it. And It has the same hitting animation as just the regular axe you use to cut down trees, which that in of itself makes it useless. And it's in, and I just like, oh my god, because sometimes when you're fighting things, you will be blocked, and this doesn't go through any blocking. And sometimes I feel like the way the animation goes, I would just like hit an enemy, it would just bounce off of them. I would get no damage, and it would just break right after that. And I was just like, okay, that's a waste. So I just let myself die and just restart the fight. And even then, the only enemies it's useful for are the three overwhelming beings in the world, and their health bar is so high that it might take down half of it. So it felt really useless. I used it on one. I'd already weeded it down to about half, and then I hit it with it, and it went down even lower. Still a reasonable chunk left, and then I kind of just beat the shit out of it until it died. Going through a lot of revives and food to keep myself alive, and having enough stamina and spirit to use the big moves I needed to do to basically poise break this guy so I can hit him with a combo real quick. Was it worth it? Did I get anything cool from it? Nope. I didn't really get anything cool from it. You know, they're cool little trinkets, items. And like I said, there are things for special abilities, including the earrings you can get, the rings. They can do some fun little things here and there. There's also pets. Pets really just gather stuff. I only had one dog. He would gather things for you, but here's the thing. If your equipment slot's filling out really quick, unless you're planning to go back and sell it off, I just dumped it right back there. So, it's cool to have a dog, I guess. But another thing I did enjoy about this game is the world, and the world is beautiful. Genuinely, I did like exploring it. It looks wonderful, and this game runs well, which makes exploring this big world a lot more pleasant. Because open world games, when they don't run well, are some of the worst experiences possible. Because you never know when you might run to an area that will absolutely fry your system and send your frame rate just off a cliff. But I was able to run this game very well on my system. Ran it at the highest setting, except for the lighting. Because everything else besides the lighting, cinematic is the highest. But on lighting, you have it maxed out. And if you max it out like I did a few times to see what it looks like along with ray tracing, oh boy, does it get rough. I go from having like 180 frames down to like 80 or 60. And that's not bad, but when you drop that significantly in frames, it does look a little wonky when you're comparing it. You know, it's like, oh, but even that's still pretty good because 60 frames is nothing to scoff at when you have everything maxed out. And I was running at 1440p, so I was happy with it. So I can't complain anything about performance. And sadly, with a lot of games I've played in just the last 5 years, performance is always something you have to worry about. It really seems like we've gone to a point to where the more money you pay for a game, the less frames in it you'll get. Pay $70 minus 70 frames. It's a fucking mess. But luckily it did well with this, so I didn't have to worry about that. And a part of the world is the side quests, and I like the side quests. They're fun enough. Some are better than others, but that's always going to be something you get. Because, of course, you can have some quests where you just deliver something. Not a lot of escort quests. Some where you're taking people one place to another. But luckily, they're fine and they're not inconvenient, especially because you can put them on the back of a horse and just ride over to the place. But most of them, you're going to be going out fighting monsters. Maybe you're looking for something or someone. Not always the most interesting thing, but fun enough. Enough to keep you engrossed. I play games with worse side quests. There's also, you're going to be clearing out a lot of different areas. You're going to be clearing out a lot of different bases full of enemies. And some of these can get tiring and annoying sometimes, but you're not really forced to do it most of the time. There's some story moments where you might have to clear out a place, but really you're okay most of the instances. You can choose to do it if there's something you want from it, or you want to increase your standing in area. There's also little mini games you can play, rock, paper, scissors. You can do marksmanship competitions, fist fights. You can gamble, horse races, things like that, which are fun enough. It's something to do, and you'll get an abyss artifact if you do them. If you beat the challenge that'll come up for it, usually beating the best person at that particular mini game. You can go out looking for crafting materials through mining, cutting down trees, gathering herbs, gathering things for food, finding new recipes. You can make friends with people. There is a kind of like an affinity meter, friendship meter thing. You get this usually through greeting them, you give them gifts. And this will let you basically, they'll give you a slip, or I give it to you, you have to buy it. But then you can get whatever resources that shop owner has at your base, at your camp, by just talking to one of the people that runs their own little store in your camp. So it does make it convenient. So you don't have to run all around the world looking for certain things. You can just get it there. And whether that's weapons, foods, ingredients, stuff like that. You can also research stuff. There's a lot of different varieties of things that you can do. And some are beneficial. They're kind of quality of life. They make things more convenient because you will be traveling around this world a lot. So it's just nice to have. I think that's largely all I have to say. So at the end of this, how do I feel about this game? I think it's good. I think it has some problems. Some have already been fixed since release, and I'm genuinely glad about that, because I think if it had stayed that way, it probably would have ruined the experience for a lot of people with these inconveniences that are in there. That I feel if it was just one or two of them, it probably wouldn't bother people a lot. But as time goes on and going through the game, they would have built up and it would just become more inconvenient, especially like the storage thing I talked about earlier that I kind of rambled on about, and because it really did bother me. It was just a big inconvenience, especially because you're going to be going so many places and getting so many things that not having some possible way of storage just inconvenience you greatly, because you could sell it off, but maybe you don't want to sell it. Maybe you want to keep it for later. And some things you can't really sell off. So you have to put them somewhere. And not to mention, you get stuff automatically sent to the storage. So them adding in the extra slots that they've added in, so it can go all the way up to 1,000, especially because when you send your people out for quests, or just when you're doing quests, sometimes your rewards will get sent back to your storage box. And you have to have that room or you can't do the quest. And they fixed performance issues that were there, because I missed out on saying this. Should have said this in performance. There were some crashes. After playing for like 6 hours, you might run into a crash. Might for some people. For me, it was relatively consistent. I'm glad I didn't forget that, because that was a big thing. Because I had to deal with it for about 60 hours. Maybe it wouldn't affect some people. If you're not like me, you were just kind of no life in this game for a while and playing like 8 hours consistently a day. Because maybe you have priorities like going outside or something like that, unlike me. But yeah, it's an annoyance. Sure, you can hop right back in, but it's still shitty. And I can't really give a game a pass for that, because that definitely ruins some people's initial experience. Some people might have worse experience. I mean, maybe they were crashing consistently, and some people couldn't even get in the game for what I saw. And I do some tweaks, because I play on Linux, so I usually do have to tweak a game right on release. Sometimes Proton doesn't work and I've used a custom version. Even then, some of the custom version won't work through Steam, so I'd run it through Lutris. But I got it working and it performed fine enough. But I'm glad they fixed the problem. Hopefully it's fixed for everybody. And there is some graphical glitches here and there, but it wasn't really annoying. I've seen worse, but seeing worse doesn't make this game better by comparison. It's still a problem, but they're working on it. And I hope they fix any other problems that I didn't notice, but some other people may have seen, because there's some good stuff in this game. Is it the best thing I ever played? Probably not. I liked it, but was it the best thing? No. But I think it's something you can have fun with. I think a lot of people are. I've seen consistently high numbers with the game, and it has very positive. But I don't really know, because Steam will delete negative things on games sometimes. If they think people are just spamming negativity, they will get rid of it, which can sometimes make something look better than it actually is. But yeah, I liked it, so I recommend giving it a try. If you're not super excited about the game, or you don't really think it's going to be the best, or you're worried about some of the issues you may have, just wait till sale. But if it's something that seems intriguing to you, give it a chance. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed listening to Ramble On for a bit. If you did, you can like, subscribe. If you're one of my few subscribers, you can unsubscribe if you really just say, oh, this is a piece of shit. This guy's a piece of shit too. You can leave a negative comment saying up shit, but it don't matter. You're free to do whatever you want. That's all. Peace. I'm out.